work with Hoyle Tanner and Associates. We are a engineering consulting firm out of Manchester, New Hampshire. With me tonight is Nicole Davis, who helps me with outreach. I'm an engineer, and so trying to communicate with the public isn't always my strength. So I have Nicole to help me with that. And I also have Jacob Sparkowitz with us, and he is the technical person assisting our team with putting the physical documents together that are required. He does the engineering aspects and the research that is required for a project of this nature. Sorry, I'm just getting used to Zoom. I've been using a Teams platform for most of my things. So as part of the funding requirements for the program that this project is using, they have a very systematic set of rules that we need to go through. And so the purpose of this meeting is to hear local concerns. What are the goals of the project? What are the aspects of the project that the team needs to know about as we're moving forward? The focus is more on big picture things and less on technical details. We'll have a second meeting in the future that will focus on some of those technical details. And since I am the relative newcomer to this game, I am going to leave it to Michael and Michael to provide a project background.
And I'm going to leave it to Michael Kowalczyk.
So I can do that, and I will share my screen. Okay, so everybody should see my screen, and on the screen it says Cheshire Trail status in Swanzey. So just to make people aware of what we're talking about here. So the Cheshire Trail, which is this yellow line here, if you can see my cursor, runs from the Keene Swanzey town line in the northeast corner of Swanzey and down into Marlborough, and then continues south, Troy and Fitzwilliam. So the section we're talking about for this particular grant is to reconstruct from the Joslin Station Road, which is near the Keene Swanzey town line up north, to the Webb Depot Road, which actually is a little bit into Marlborough on the southern end. And that's about 4.2 miles of that part of the trail. On the Ashwelot side, there's about 6.7 miles total of Ashwelot Trail in Swanzey. And and a portion of that was done several years ago from the Swanzey Keene town line to what I call the first Holbrook Avenue crossing, because the trail crosses Holbrook twice. And so that was done several years ago. And for this grant, we're talking about the remaining section, which is from that first Holbrook Avenue crossing in West Swanzey down to the Swanzey Winchester town line. Plus, there's a little section at Pine Street, which is where the Swanzey Recycle Center, that's the street Swanzey Recycle Center is located on, that also needs to be repaired and reconstructed. We've been defining reconstruction to mean upgrade and improve the trails to a standard that is suitable for walkers, bikers, hikers, runners, and equestrian of all ages. So in brief, I say a 6-year-old could ride a bike on it. And also, most of these trails used today are suitable for snowmobilers. So we're basically trying to upgrade the quality of the trail. And that means all the drainage ditches are working, the culverts are working, the width of the trail surfaces back to the railroad's width, which is anywhere from 10 to 14 feet. It's a crushed stone trail surface that's slightly crowned. Mowing would include a 10-foot canopy so we can get maintenance equipment up and down the trail, and also add road gates at road crossings to prevent motorized access and also dumping. Quickly, benefits, economic value benefits, increased real estate value, increased tourism, improving commuting through biking and pedestrian use to commute back and forth on a daily basis, improve health through active living so that people are naturally more active using the trail, so therefore their health gets better, their medical costs go down, and also reduces deaths. Also helps with the environment, so there's environmental benefits, helps control flooding in floodplain areas, which we have along the Ashwila Trail, and also enhance cultural awareness and community identity. So that's kind of a quick summary of what we're talking about. So that's all I have.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So are we, oh, share back. So continuing forward, the program requirements generally indicate that we start with a clean slate with no preconceived notions of what the actual project that gets constructed will look like. That we develop essentially a purpose and need, and from that we move forward with looking at usually 3 options, where one is the favorite, one is something we settle on, and the third option is a do nothing option. And obviously the do nothing option rarely meets our goals and objectives of the project. However, the way the funding agency requires us to describe, that is always a consideration. It typically gains momentum when there are significant environmental, cultural challenges to be overcome. And nothing on this project leads us to believe that that will be the outcome of this study that we're currently working on. So we're starting the study. This is the first step. And we gather information this evening. Jacob, our team member, has been gathering background and setting up a lot of the other aspects that are required with reaching out to other stakeholders and seeing if there's any potential utility impacts and those kinds of elements. We compile everything into the study with the alternatives, and then we will meet with the higher level stakeholders, the town representatives and the trail representatives, and ensure that what we have found will in fact meet the goals and objectives of the primary stakeholders. From that point, we schedule the next meeting where we would present our alternatives back to the public. And at that meeting, we seek more detailed information. Are there elements that perhaps our chosen alternative does not fulfill, and we need to look at it such that can we fulfill it with the resources that we have available? After we gain what we hope to be consensus on what we move forward with, we finalize our study and submit it to the New Hampshire Department of Transportation, who manages our funding. They review it in detail, and when they concur that we're moving in the right track, we're allowed to move forward with beginning of a design element. So again, Michael's presented a lot of the project background and the goal. Touching on the funding again, it's critical to the success of this project that we meet all of the little requirements of the funding agencies, because if something is missed, then at the end, the funding agency doesn't have to continue forward with the project. And our goal is not only to have them continue forward, but to more fully support it and perhaps find additional revenue to continue to support additional elements. Again, I think that Michael's graphic was probably better than ours, but this is again the blow up version of what we're looking at for the trail, which we can come back to these graphics should people have specific questions on certain elements. And again, touching on the Cheshire. Again, the schedule right now, we're in this engineering study phase. COVID certainly had an adverse impact on the project's ability to move forward with the delayed review by the funding agency on the process that the town started to go through. However, we think once we're into the study phase and moving forward, a lot of the other steps can go relatively smoothly. So again, the goal of this meeting is to hear from the public. That's really what we're here for. A typical non-COVID meeting, I would have some tables laid out with plans on the tables where everybody could stand around and look at the graphics, and we'd have an interactive discussion. So that is the hope and vision of this meeting, that people have positive things to say or wishes, wants, needs, and desires, and we're able to make notes of those and bring them back to our engineering side and incorporate everything into what our proposal will be. So I think Nicole has suggested that we use a hand raising element to have people chat.
Yep. So if they raise their hand virtually, then I can unmute them and they'd be allowed to speak. So for anybody that would like to comment or ask questions, feel free to raise your hand now.
And we really want people to speak because this can be very painful. Again, I will cite again, I am an engineer and I do not have a great strength in getting people to chat. Nicole can get people to chat, but the kinds of things we're interested in, some of the other local concerns meetings that I've held, which would not apply in this case because we have generally, we're going to match the stone dust surface. But some of the comments people say is that they don't want a hard surface trail because it encourages skateboarders or rollerbladers or something along those lines. So those are some of the kinds of input that we're looking for. Michael has explained that you have a diverse group of users, runners, bikers, equestrian, and then winter uses are also under consideration here. But looking for any positives. Is it the community's desire to have informational kiosks with lessons on them? Would it be a vision for homeschoolers to be able to go along the trail and learn about some of the historic stone box culverts or some of the historic stone arch culverts?
I see Mike Kowalczyk has his hand up, I think, so we'll go to him next, but we have a number of staff members on here, so you will be called on, so be prepared.
Okay, so a couple comments. One, I'd really like the project to do all it can to prevent motorized vehicle access. So, you know, we have seen all kinds of motorized vehicles on the trails, cars, trucks, ATVs, dirt bikes. And right now, according to the state, none of those vehicles are allowed on the trail. So we need to be looking closely at where they're getting on the trail and how we can gate it off to prevent that from happening. And that would also lead probably to my second comment, which is prevent dumping. So because of that, there's dumping that happens. We've done at least two cleanups on the trails since I've been involved. And because people pull up on there and they just dump trash, right? And so we got to try to prevent that as much as we can. Other than that, the things I already mentioned in my presentation, I'd like to see happen. Right now, there's lots of places on the trail where water's getting on the trail. as soon as we get any kind of rain, and that just destroys the surface. So we got to really prevent the water from getting on the trail through the ditches working and the culverts working. And that's all I got right now. I'll let other people talk.
Jake, are
Nicole,
you able to
Nicole, are you
share?
going to be calling on people that have their hands up, or do you want me to do that, or you're muted, Nicole?
Nicole, you're muted.
I had allowed Mike to speak and I've asked him to unmute himself. I just don't know if he's still there or.
I'm here.
Okay, great.
I've never been on the end of where I was asked that way, so this is new. So I'm just hanging out tonight, working a little. I'm the building inspector in town, and have gone on the trail. First, before we get too far away, I can't say enough good things about the work that Mr. Kowalczyk's done for us as a community. Absolutely phenomenal. There's no better partner anybody could ask for. And I hope I'm glad he's on the trail. And I'm glad he's staying healthy, and then he'll live a good long time so he can do this for a good long time. We got a little piece of property that was recently cleaned out and set up over on Summer Street, which would be between the Pine Street crossing and the Holbrook crossing. And there's a building that Eversource owns. It's a lovely old brick building that they really don't have a lot of use for anymore. And I'd like to try to talk to them about turning that into, it would be a really good put-in area, and it could be a really good space to just kind of hang out. We could put up some cool pictures, historic pictures. That was the major area for the railroad depot back in the day. That's why the lot lines through there are so wonky. When you look at that, that's just south of the Christian Hill Bridge. You'll see that the lines are really weird through there, the property lines, and that's one of the reasons. So it's got a lot of cool history and the rest of that stuff. As a guy who deals with real estate transactions routinely, I can tell you that the trail is indeed an actual draw. It's not just something that works for a bullet on a brochure. People do see that, they do use it. And during COVID, I don't think the trails have ever been more used than they are now. I mean, everybody's out on them, and they're really taking stock in the good fortune that they have to have that so near their home. And long story short, I think it's just one of those things that makes Swanzey a complete community. It's part of what makes us absolutely complete. We've got a little bit of everything, and where recreation didn't exist, we created it. It's fantastic. Appreciate your time.
Excellent. Thank you. Yes, I too was aware of Michael before I ever did business with Swanzey, because I am a trail user. And everywhere I looked, there was something about Michael and his positive impact to the community. So as a non-Swanzey resident, I too give Michael accolades for the work he's done on these trails.
And we can never forget Bruce Bohannon and all those people that set it up to give Michael the really good head start that he had.
Right,
Sure.
absolutely.
Larry.
Hi there. The only thing I would add to what basically what Mike laid out, and I noticed it by looking at the diagrams, but it reminded me of that. I'm concerned about just getting onto and off of the trail at various spots. So it's real easy to say, oh, the Cheshire Trail, which is what I'm more familiar with, that goes from the Great Big Bridge all the way down to the Little Stone Bridge. And that's really great if you want to go from those two bridges, one to the other. But if you want to go, say, to the fairground, we don't really give people a nice way. So there's no crosswalk on Route 12 if you want to take your bike down and cross over to the fairground, or if you want to go further down to one of the other roads and maybe make a big loop from the Cheshire Trail over to the Ashwheelet Trail and then back up to Keene. We don't really give them that opportunity. So we can get them all the way down to the small bridge on the Webb Depot Road, and then they need to figure out, okay, I can go back down to the Web Depot Road, come back out to Route 12, come back up to the Swanzey Factory Road, or, whatever or the Flat Roof Mill Road. But it's not really clear. And I was just wondering if that's part of the overall design of this as well, that, that there needs to be, more than just the start and the stop of the section that we're going to do. There needs to be access points as you go along for interesting things.
Yes.
Thank you.
So definitely access and parking and crossings are all part of the planning effort. Things are included gradually as they make sense. Sometimes there's additional finessing that needs to be done after the trail starts changing the makeup of the users. So initially, it may start as diehard trail people. However, as it gains popularity, random people start using it, which is a wonderful thing, but their habits and how they use the trail also change. So modifications happen on the fly. The best way, so I made the notes, but that's great intel if you can pass on to your community or provide in the chat your contact information such that we can reach out to you for other specific locations that make sense for these access points and for additional crossings that might not be directly associated with the trail, but would benefit the trail users.
Yeah, and Larry is on our Rail Trail Advisory Committee, so we definitely know how to reach him.
Perfect.
And Bev, it looks like you want to contribute.
Yeah, I do. I take the minutes for all the different boards and committees in Swansea, and I'm particularly interested in the rail trail because I use it. I like to walk the trails. A couple of things that the folks on the team have mentioned that I think would be worthwhile pursuing would be, and I don't know whether you guys would be doing this, but a way to connect the two trails, a way to connect between Cheshire Trail and Eschwilo Trail. There isn't any way to do that today. And I don't know what that would take, but it's something to consider. The other item that I would enjoy personally is having some sort of mileage signage. I mean, even if it's not a great big sign, but something low on the ground that people wouldn't bother vandalizing, that just says 2 miles to next parking area, or I don't know, whatever, just information about mileage, maybe to the next, crossing over a river, whatever. I think it would be a very, or even to the lines, to the town lines, that would be useful as well. So those are the two things that I think would be very helpful for those of us who like to use the trails. Thank you.
That's excellent input. One of my favorite trails has a lot of the original rail concrete markers that are all numbered per mile marker. And I do enjoy, especially if I've bitten off a little more than I can chew on a ride, coming back, I know exactly how far it is back to the parking lot
Right.
headed.
Exactly.
So that's been great. Along some of those trails also, we've gained sponsors who have put up little signs to coffee shops or restaurants or other features. We've also seen some branch pieces of trail where people have secured rights such that cyclists can go through a parcel to get to those stores or businesses or apartment buildings. And so the cooperative effort there has been very helpful. And in exchange, those people typically get some notice on the sign that courtesy of them, this is there, and these are the features that this little side path reaches to. So that is a really great idea.
Super. Thank you.
Hey, Michael, back to Larry's point for a quick minute. when we last met with, at least together anyway, with the state out at the Berninger property, it seemed they were pretty amenable to letting us turn that front area into parking space and a put-in takeout area. Now that it's under new management, it might be an interesting opportunity to take a bite at that apple with them, as the new owners plan on what they're going to do with it and how they're going to use it.
Yeah, it's depending on what the new owners want to do, there's an opportunity there.
Michael, your hand is raised. Do you want to hop in?
Assuming it's me, Michael, not the other Michael. But so
We'll move to him next.
So kind of leveraging off Mike Jasmine's comment, another thing I thought of is if there's possibly an opportunity for maintenance equipment storage. So one of the other things we're working on is trying to get maintenance equipment for the trails, which is tractors and brush hogs and those kinds of things, because we got a lot of trail to do and you can't do it, with a hand mower. So if there was a place to store that stuff near the trail, which would be convenient, then it's easier for volunteers like me to get to the equipment and get on the trail and do work versus having to put it on a trailer and trailer it around. So one opportunity is the Berninger property. There is, a big red building that's actually sitting on the state property. Half the building's on state property. I don't know what the state is going to want to do with that. I'm assuming you guys are going to talk to them about that to see what they want to do, but maybe we take a piece of that and use it for equipment storage. I don't know, but just something to consider. Is there a way we can come up with equipment storage that's on or near the trail?
Well,
as far as trail access, leveraging Larry's comment, there's a privately owned, what looks like kind of a parking lot just north of the Nissan dealer on the Cheshire Trail, and there is a trail header already there that goes up to the trail. So that's a potential opportunity if we can contact the owner and see if they'd be willing to allow us to use that space. That would be a great place where people can, because it's plenty big for parking. Like I said, trail header exists. And also Beverly's comment about a loop. There's been discussions about how we can create a loop, and one of them is to use Marcy Hill Road. Again, it's just an idea, but Marcy Hill goes up to Fox Hill, I believe, and then on the other side is Sycamore, and then you could get back to the Ashuelot Trail. So one thing to consider is just how to get on and off the Cheshire Trail at Marcy Hill. Again, you gotta slice through a small piece of privately owned property to do that, but that is a place another potential place to get on and off the trail. And finally, signage. We've actually got a small group working on some signage. So if you guys are interested in seeing what that looks like, we have samples and we're actually doing an experiment. We're gonna put a few signs on the trail so people can look at it, comment on it, that type of thing. But I could show you what those signage designs look like, and they are road trail crossing signs with mileage markers and town line signs and prohibited vehicle signs and things like that. So
yeah, that's excellent. If you want to send us some copies, that would be great.
sure, I'll send you. What I'll send you is a Google link, a Google Drive link to those files.
Perfect.
Michael Ranley?
Sure. So I'll start by telling Ashley that she's going to be called on next so she can start preparing her thoughts. She's our recreation director. And then just to kind of echo Beverly a little bit, I'm not a Swanzey resident, but I am a town employee. I'm mainly a user of the Ashuelot Trail, very close to the office, convenient. I can park at the little parking area by the covered bridge and go either way. I'm excited to have that little section by Pine Street done, because right now it's kind of like running in the beach a little bit. It's pretty pretty sandy, and not that you can't get around it, but it will be nice to have that done. Just to echo the signage, I think signage will be great both for the trail users, but also people that are using the road that they may go by and kind of see that there's a trail there but not really know what it is. If you're coming from like West Swansea and you're going to Keene, there's really no reason to use, Eaton Road, which the folks here know, very, very narrow, high traffic road. People probably will still use it, but I think more signs to help encourage people, best bike route to Keene, or vice versa, best route to West Swansea or Winchester. I think signage will be key. And then on Cheshire, just to echo the other folks' thoughts, is just to try to, I know might not be part of this project, but just if I were to want to use Cheshire Trail, I don't really know where I would legally park. I mean, I know I can park kind of near Mount Huggins, near the on-ramp, but that's kind of, I'll say unofficial parking or not really designated parking. So again, might be somewhat beyond this project, but I think some areas to allow people to get onto that trail would be helpful, because at least Ashwillet does have designated parking, but Cheshire really doesn't right now.
Excellent.
So Ashley, it sounded like you were up next.
So I'm Ashley, I'm the recreational director. I've met with Mike and really talked about a lot of the potential opportunities that we can do with the trail. The connecting of the two trails would be an ideal project to really work on towards. From the recreational standpoint, we could do so much with a almost 10K race where we kind of be connecting to Keene and make one big loop, which would be a great opportunity for a recreational event, along with getting more people on it for biking and things like that. I know you guys talked about the portion over by the transfer station. I know that's by Dickinson Forest, which is also what we look to for the recreational department is going to work on kind of improving on as well. So if we can maybe even just connect the two of those areas so that people could access by the rail trails into that forest so that they can have another hiking opportunity off of the loop kind of opportunity. I haven't really looked to see different hiking options off of the loop over on the Cheshire Rail Trail, but it'd be something I'd love to consider if we could get people across the road. I know that there are some different hiking opportunities up behind Marcy Hill and things like that. That would be great to see people on if we can get landowner permission and things like that.
Great. Those are good ideas again. Michael, who are you going to tag next?
We have our DPW director, Joe DeRusso. He's going to probably claim that he's new to the job, but we could try to call on him next.
Good evening, everybody. We're just taking in. I've been working on the rail trail a little bit with Michael, as far as setting up some of these temporary signs. I have a significant law enforcement background. With the rail trails, one of the significant issues I see is areas allowing cars to access them without gating. It's a huge safety issue. Secondary, obviously, people doing illegal dumping. But most importantly, safety. You have people going down those trails with vehicles, whether it be at night and during the day, and there's potential for serious safety issue. But I agree with everything everybody's saying. It's a great system, and I'm glad it's looking to be some upgrades. Highway Department will be helping out with some of the projects. We're going to be redecking one of the bridges as soon as weather cooperates and installing some of those signs coming forward. The select board is very supportive of helping the rail trail committee and with these projects in our downtime.
And I think that reminds me, Joe, we're talking about some of these carve outs for parking areas. I think that's a great opportunity for kind of smaller side projects done by Public Works, where it's, not contracting out necessarily like this large project, but I think those smaller projects will be a great partnership with the Public Works Department.
Yes, and some of these small areas on the public way of the road, we could make some parking with a little planning and talking with some of the neighboring property owners. That's all I have.
Thank you. So yes, from the Ashwillet Trail, we certainly have more opportunities for the undesirable access because there are a series of agricultural crossings. And so important to the success of limiting undesired access is getting property owner consensus as to how we will prevent the undesirables while still making it easy for those that need agricultural crossing or driveway crossings for these locations. So the classic traditional is the big orange gate that we have at a number of places. But as a trail user, clearly that is not my favorite, most desirable aspect of riding any trail. So we need to balance, how do we succeed at keeping the undesirables while still making it a pleasant non-nuisance for the trail users and the property owners. So I will likely be reaching out to seek additional input on creative ideas that we may have to address those concerns.
So a comment to that, just to keep in mind, is we do need to continue to allow snowmobile access. So whatever that gating system is, it has to be opened so that in the winter months, you know, the snowmobiles can get on and off the trails.
So I have seen opportunities where the gates are closed except when there's snow cover that would prohibit random car type vehicles from accessing. But the snow needs to be deep enough to actually have an effect on that access.
Is there anybody else that has any comments or questions?
Don have his hand up before?
Who's that?
I think Don Mazanowski.
He just spoke. He was the
Oh.
one that was talking about the snowmobiles.
Gotcha. Yep.
Dawn, it looks like you've raised your hand again. Go ahead.
I knew it.
Can you unmute him?
How about now?
Yes.
Perfect.
Excellent. Okay. Jane and I live on Depot Road, so we're toward the tail end, toward the Winchester line. And so we're absolutely thrilled that this discussion is happening because we usually have to bypass about 2.9 miles and get to Holbrook. If we're going to run on the rail trail, we like to do that. I would just echo the surface. You know, we love the hard pack because we're older in our early 60s and we're extending our running lives by being able to run on hardpack versus asphalt. The only question I would have is it must be harder to overall maintain because it seems like grass and weeds will get in on the sides no matter what. And it seems like a section from Holbrook heading toward Pine Street, it's a little narrow there. And it looks like, you know, the weeds and grass are kind of encroaching. It must be hard to try to maintain that and keep that clear over the years, I would guess.
Yes, the hard pack comes with some maintenance challenges that a traditional paved surface don't have. However, the hard pack comes with added benefits such as you've mentioned, that it tends to leave the trails for use for more of the purists that want it for the walking, running, and gravel biking.
Mm-hmm. The other quick question or the other comment I would make is you're talking about parking. I guess what we tend to do is just we park our vehicles right in front of the gates, and we're assuming that that's okay because there's really no other way to kind of do it. We see that there and around Matthews Road and such that people will tend to do that. And assuming if there's an area where you can park your car, that's okay to do while you use the trail.
So most of the time, parking in front of the gates is not desirable for a number of reasons, including emergency access. Unfortunately, that does happen from time to time. And also the volunteers like Michael may want that gated access to go in and do their maintenance. And if they're giving up a day where they're planning to jump onto the trail from that particular point, and there's a vehicle there which doesn't allow them the access they planned for, that can cause a little bump in the road. So a goal from this process will be to determine what are the rules. Will parking be allowed at the gates or not? And if it's not allowed at the gates, what is the community's plan for where will parking be allowed? Are there any sections of a shoulder in a road that may be a temporary parking area until a future phase can actually construct a formal parking lot? So that's part of what this process does, is go through those kinds of aspects.
That's great. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Alan, you're up.
Can you unmute? There we go.
Okay, how about now?
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay, good, thanks. Yeah, I'm a several year member of the Rails Trails Committee, and I have to add my kudos to Mike. He's done a great job with us. It is such a great resource. I live on South Road near the fire station, and I use both rail trails a lot. Some of the things I'd like to see, and I apologize, I was a little late, so these may have been covered, but
No worries.
more parking on the Cheshire Trail, certainly. I'd also like to see maybe some benches and picnic tables along a few spots. That would, I think, make it more desirable for people to use it. And then one of my favorite routes to do, I think it's 16, 18 miles long. I go along Flat Roof Mill Road. I go up on the old the logging skid road onto the Cheshire Trail. I take that into Keene on the bike path, and I come back the Ashwila Trail and come back along Swanzey Lake Road. And if there was ever any way, for instance, like a bike lane or something could be put in on Swanzey Lake Road, that would just be so awesome. That's it. That's all my comments. And I thank you very much for this meeting and the opportunity to speak.
Thank you for providing comments.
You're welcome.
Every comment, no matter how minor, is very much appreciated, because I know what my preferences are, but my preferences may not be the same as what Swansea's users are. And the goal is to give Swansea what they want first. And yes, you're going to have other randoms like me passing through your community. However, the goal is to tailor the improvements to what the Swansea residents want and need.
And I think repeated comments, even if they're similar, are still helpful, right, for the record?
Yes.
Yeah. So don't be afraid to repeat. Yes, I agree with what so-and-so said. And Bruce,
Yeah,
you had your hand up before, Bruce, so I don't think we're going to let you get out of participating.
Bev, you also have your hand up live, so go ahead and
Okay.
then
Okay.
we'll move on to Bruce.
I just wanted to agree with Alan. As a user of the trails, and I'm an older person, and so is my husband, we would very much appreciate even a half a log or something, a stump to sit on every once in a while, just to rest and drink some water. It's one thing trails just do not have. If you're a walker and you want to go 3 or 4 miles, you'd like to stop every once in a while and rest. We have back problems, and it's just helpful. I don't know what you would put out there that somebody wouldn't want to destroy, but you'd have to do something rustic, I think, something simple. As I said, just the stump of a tree is at the right height. It makes a good bench. So yes, I would certainly agree with Alan with regards to that. Thank you.
You're welcome. That's a great comment. Part of my trail is a day. We go for a day. So we pick out where are we having lunch before we even leave for our adventure. We know pretty much the mile marker-ish where we're going to have lunch. And because we've done a lot of repeat riding, yeah, sometimes it is a bridge rail or a guardrail or something that is where we end up sitting to have our lunch. But I find those aspects very valuable as well.
Bruce, you're up. Bruce, if you're talking, we can't hear you.
Come on, Bruce, we were singing your praises before you got on the meeting.
He's unmuted, so that's,
I think he had a microphone issue on one of the other meetings we had with him, so I wonder if he's having that issue again.
Is there an
Bruce, if-
opportunity to use the chat?
that's what I was just about to say. If you're unable to get your audio to work, feel free to use the chat and we can address your question there too.
No, I think I got it working now.
There you are.
All right, old timer here. Just takes me a while to get going, wound up. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for letting me speak. I'm Bruce over here on the West Swanzey side with the Ashwell Rail Trail side. Been actively involved in the work on that trail for many, many years. The other day, just as for instance, I happened to be going down with the snow groomer down the rail trail. And when I got down into Dawn's area, I noticed that even though we haven't gotten any rain, there's quite a bit of water in the bed. So we've got some serious ditching to do down in that area for water control. If you haven't in your survey already figured out, we've got a culvert to replace down just south of Holbrook Avenue, the second Holbrook Avenue, between there and the road that goes to the Sportsman's Club. There's a big culvert there, double culvert that's going to have to be replaced. And that's a result of, I guess, washouts and overflow from a lot of water down in that area. There's another culvert to the south of that, between there and the Tower Road, what is now called the Tower Road. That is, we may need to investigate and take a look at the tail end of the big culvert that goes across the rail trail. I don't have the culvert number with me. I should have probably had it written down. But anyway, we should be looking at that also, just for safety concerns. There was a problem there years ago, and somebody tried to fix it and actually plugged it up, and the water all backed up on the head side. And so that's something to be aware of. There's another culvert to the north of Holbrook Avenue on the south end, approaching the Brown Farm, that is got some erosion on the side of the trail that's going down to the big culvert that comes away from the pond that's on the Brown property, that hopefully you've pinpointed and seen that some work needs to be done in that area. I had first raised my hand because of the comments about parking in the front of the gates. No, that is not allowed and recommended by the Trails Bureau for the safety, as you pointed out, Heidi. It's just not a good idea. If somebody falls down and breaks a leg, it makes it impossible for the ambulance crew to even get their UTV down there from the fire department to pick up that person. So they would lose some very valuable time there to get that taken care of. I have a number of drawings that on gates that have been used on the Cheshire North side when Keene did all their improvements. One of the problems that we had on the north end was that the city of Keene took it on their own to put the gate in and made the gate too narrow. We can't get a groomer safely up through there. The groomer that I currently run is 9 feet 6 inches on the blade. And they have all they can do to get that groomer through that gate. So we need to be mindful of the width of these gates when we put them in, and also to be able to have access for the horses to be able to go through those closed gates during the non-snowmobile seasons. And I gotta, once I see the plans, then I can start coming up with some other stuff that I think would be appropriate. That's it for the moment.
Thank you very much.
Is there anybody else that has questions?
Yes, I have a quick comment.
Michael?
So,
Yeah.
speaking of gates, so the Monadnock Conservancy recently put a gate in on the very southern end of the Cheshire Trail down at Fitzwilliam, on a trail header that goes to Sip Pond. So it's the gate's right off the Cheshire Trail on a trail header to Sip Pond. And I really liked it. So maybe you could take a look at that and look at that design. Again, southern end of the Cheshire Trail in Fitzwilliam, a trail header that goes to Sip Pond. Monadnock Conservancy did that, I think last year or the year before.
Excellent, thank you.
I guess one last comment about gating. It also has to be done so that the motorized vehicles can't go around the gate, because we have that case right now. There's the gate, but then there's still a way to get around the gate. So it's got to be blocked outside the gate, you know, on the width side. So.
Thanks, Mike.
So as we wrap things up, there is an opportunity, if you think of additional pieces of information that you'd like us to be aware of, or some other wow thoughts that you wish you thought of when you were here, feel free to reach out. Email is typically the best way to reach me. And my email address is on the screen, but if you can't see that, it's hmarshall@hoyletanner.com. So HMARSHALL at Hoyle, HOYLE, Tanner, TANNER.com. So we expect to be moving forward with outlining our approach over the next few weeks, and then assembling our ideas, and then hope to meet with, again, what I would call the key stakeholders, which is likely most everybody on this call, but any of you that reach out to people that weren't able to join us tonight, or people that you know have a passion, but this isn't their thing, that they don't like to join these calls or don't have the resources, feel free again to send along any of their comments, considerations, or things that they feel are important. But there are limited funds available, and we want to make sure that we're using the available funds to provide as many of the wish list items that we are able. So as we're approaching 7 o'clock, any last thoughts from anyone before we break up for the night?
Thank everyone for coming.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for presenting.
Thank you all, very much appreciated. There was a lot of great information, constructive information, and that's exactly what we need to do our job well.
Great. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep. Good night.
Good night.